We continue to sail through the sky here, my friends, just as Jarry did, or Dr. Fostrel, Jarry, Alfred Jarry, one of our big inspirations, sailing through the streets of Paris on a skiff. We are sailing through the sky here, powering into the weekend. Welcome back, Artist Journal, June 2nd, 2023, broadcasting to the world from inner space in Berlin, Germany. My name is Adrian Pocobelli. Welcome back. Here's Bazaya with what I think is a pastiche. I keep saying what I think is a pastiche. I'm pretty sure now. I actually brought up a definition here. My hairdresser is trying to leave my hair longer. I think it's a good idea, but it is a challenge at times. Continuing on, so beautiful work here. Look at this work by Bazaya here. Of course, this looks like Notorious B.I.G. in what looks like a classical composition, which I feel like I recognize, but I can't place right now. If you know what the reference is, feel free to leave a comment in the YouTube or wherever, Twitter, wherever you prefer, because I feel like I know this feels like a familiar composition here, and familiar colors too from Bazaya out of Argentina, and playing with this idea, almost like Bazaya's heroes, one could imagine, as these this pantheon, these heavenly figures in paradise here. So a very fun series, and just technically, we continue to see here, I don't know how well you can see it here, but you can kind of see it, this texture that is here. It looks like a roughly painted gesso underneath, and it looks spectacular, and we're continuing to see this, what I want to call a fusion between the digital and the physical, strangely enough. Again, I'm kind of back to this very simple idea. Remember Art Matter, and I need to reach out to Art Matter. Mental note to myself, maybe I'm kind of want to see if they want to do a space. But remember Art Matter, the guys who do the Zancan with the pen plotter, but really advanced in charcoal. And I believe they're also the people who do the 3D painting, where it actually creates texture. I think they work with like MIT and this sort of thing. What happens if you make a digital artwork like this? And we were discussing in last spaces that there is software, I'm not sure if it's Blender, that can interpret two-dimensional images like this and create a three-dimensional topological model. So what happens if you give it a work that kind of simulates physical work like we see here? This underpainting, sometimes we see paper, this visual, texture underneath this digital paper. What happens when you do something like this? And I don't know if you can see this, the gesso kind of lifting off the canvas here. And it really looks painted here. It's beautiful. What happens if you can create that with their 3D, oil painting tool, and all of a sudden that's how you make your oil painting? It kind of boggles the mind. So anyways, another tangent for us. Juicy is in the hand here, so I'm not sure what the reference is there. Maybe the clothing brand. And here is Nike. And of course, just a beautiful plants and everything. So this, you might remember, All a Dream, and this sold edition of 10. So a cool Tezos series here, except it offers between 19 and 26 Tezos here. And going to an all-star cast. And you might remember this last one, Welcome to Paradise. So it seems to be a new series on Tezos, Sky is the Limit. Maybe doing Bazaya's heroes. This looks like Dennis Rodman a little bit. Again, with wings, these kind of angelic figures, these almost saints, a canon of sorts in, Bazaya's pantheon, shall we say. And so anyways, beautiful work here from Bazaya. And continuing on, so again, this looks like a pastiche here. So I brought up the definition of pastiche because it's always good to remind ourselves, and even, I need many attempts to remember things. So pastiche in visual art refers to an artistic work that imitates the style of another artist or work. So it's not just the style of another artist, because you could argue here, well, this is Bazaya's style. is that pastiche? But I think it is pastiche because of this, or work. So if I'm right, and this is based on another artwork, which I think it is, then I think we could still call it pastiche because it imitates the style, another work. It can be seen as a form of tribute, criticism, or simply a technique to explore different artistic styles. Unlike parody, pastiche is often used to celebrate rather than mock the work it imitates. The term pastiche is also used more broadly to refer to a mixture or hodgepodge of different elements. In this context, a pastiche could be a single work of art that combines elements of different styles or traditions. It can also be seen as a way of engaging in a dialogue with art history. So, again, I think that's what we have in that first image, and we think of Rare and RJ. There are quite a few, pastiche. I wouldn't want to call them pastiche artists because it's not like Bizaya only uses pastiche, but a lot of use of pastiche. Referencing and recontextualizing the works of past artists in order to create something new. So I think right here, pastiche can be seen as a way of engaging in a dialogue with art history, referencing and recontextualizing the works of past artists in order to create something new. I think that's what we're talking about. So I think pastiche is, in fact, the right word. It's important to note that while pastiche involves imitation, it doesn't necessarily imply a lack of originality. It can often serve as a tool for critical commentary or a means for artists to explore their own style in relation to the broader art historical context. So I think that is, this paragraph here seems to be what we're seeing with, again, Rare, RJ, maybe in this first work that we looked at by Bizaya. So a little bit of color there on pastiche. Very interesting comment. So you might remember here yesterday this very provocative, arguably controversial work by Ratcloak that we were looking at in amazement. So very interesting comment here. Genresis. Hi, I had to pause the video and comment on the Malevich matter right as I saw it. Malevich was born in Kiev, today's Ukraine, to a Polish family, but is or has been generally identified as Russian, just as you, as a very educated person, did by heart. I guess this is more important than it initially seems. There's a lot of threads about things and people that are considered Russian in general public, but actually are not. You wonder if this is a legacy of the Soviet Union, in the sense that, Russia kind of gets identified vaguely, you might say, with the Soviet Union. So then I wonder if that's the cause of what Genresis is pointing out. I did not know any of that, because it's true. I mean, even in the website, I think it was Artsy, if I'm not mistaken, which had Malevich as a Russian artist. So this is very interesting, and I mean, maybe Polish even. So all to say, let's just continue here. It is a complex matter, definitely. Even like, is it a Soviet artist? Because I think it was done in the 1920s, right? Of course, but I'm quite sure that from Ratcloak's perspective, it is an important part of the artwork. It sure seems like not an accident. That would be quite the coincidence. It is absolutely a political piece, and the black square in many ways highlights through a warped mirror the nature of Russian imperialist methods of robbing, killing, burning, etc. So, again, you can just see this just speaks to everything that's going on in this piece. I mean, it's a pretty interesting comment. So thank you, Genresis. Very, very interesting. And thank you also to Human Boy. Actually, I should have brought it up here. Mick Renders and Human Boys has a collaboration, super helpful and knowledgeable. I'm looking forward to the space with Mick Renders on 3D printing. They just released a collab. And just have to say that Fake Smile's work is mind-blowing. So that is great to hear. Agreed. And shout out to Fake Smile. Thanks for doing the timestamps there yesterday. That was a nice surprise. And thank you for it was all great. And look, Marcelo Pinel, so wonderful responses here today. Oh, thank you so much again for mentioning two of my works. I feel so important when you talk about my work. Deep gratitude. That was really nice. And El Greco, I love Ratcloak's work. Amazing artist. Nice video. Thank you. Thank you for showing Fake Smile's work. So Yeah, fake smile making some waves here. What a cool surprise. And we heard from Dylan, and I think we have some works by Dylan in this episode too. Thank you, Adrian. So you're welcome. So thank you all for the comments. This is totally awesome and cool and interesting. Speaking of comments, just a couple of comments I saw out in the ether that I thought were pretty interesting. This is Sarah Zucker, who is a pretty well-known, I thought I followed her, who is a pretty well-known artist in the NFT space, in the digital art space, I guess we'd call it. When we use creator in place of artist, we prioritize production over vision. So taking issue with the idea of calling artists creators, what a waste to position our visionaries as mere cogs in the machine. And yet, as AI invalidates work as the crux of society, so work is the basis of society, artists are the ones who will find the new path forward. So an interesting comment here. I mean, I almost have a different point of view. I kind of feel like, because we hear this, it's not the first time we might hear, hey, artists are the leaders of society. And, I kind of feel sometimes the artists are over romanticized and over mythologized, because what is, non-artists supposed to think? Let's say you're just someone who maybe has some pretty good ideas, but you're not an artist. And I say this as an artist, by the way. I've always thought of myself as an artist, and I consider myself an artist first and foremost, despite, say, doing this is an artist journal. So I'm not out to attack artists, because that's me. But then I feel like I can say it was, I think the artists get over romanticized as, being more important than they should be. And there are all sorts of people that call themselves artists that might not have as good of ideas as people who are not artists. And, and again, I'm kind of back to this idea, should everybody that's not an artist be a second-class citizen? So just to kind of see this from a bit of a different perspective, although I take the point, because I think this is what Sarah is probably, emphasizing here, is that creator it turns it into a cog in the machine, as she puts it, where it's about production, and almost you're kind of back to where we're just these, slaves to capitalism here, and we're, subverting. By calling artists creators, we're subverting the visionary aspect. And I do agree that artists, and as well as other people, can be visionaries. So just an interesting comment, though. I thought that was just from a language perspective interesting. I don't really have a strong view one way or the other, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Interesting comment. OXDGB. So this was an interesting comment too. I just blocked 3 people who have continuously jibed and questioned my art several times over the last few weeks. For the most part, I ignore it, but there becomes a point where it becomes too much. I don't understand why people do it. Do they genuinely enjoy bringing people down? Well, human nature being human nature, it's not a crazy thought. I guess philosophically on human nature here, I do think it has a bias towards pessimism by default, and that if you're positive, this isn't something that happened by nature. Positivity is something you actually have to nurture in oneself. If you don't like my art, that's fine. We all like different things, but I kindly ask you to keep your comments to yourself and use that energy and time to promote an artist you like. And yeah, I mean, this almost shouldn't need to be said. Put it this way: you might notice on this show, I'm not trashing anybody. I'm not criticizing. I might have comments, like we're looking at Sarah Zucker's comment. I may disagree on certain things in a friendly way, but it's kind of bad form, is sort of my take on going like that. It's usually artists that haven't accomplished too much are usually the biggest critics. And I say that as when I hadn't accomplished too much, I was probably way more critical than I am now. Now it's more like, there's nothing to be gained from being critical, as they, it's just so. And OXDGB is actually a pretty cool artist. The one with the, so it's not like some small artist sold at Sotheby's and is, so it's just kind of an interesting, this is a pretty established artist in the digital art scene to hear that. So yeah, just interesting comment, and it's just worth mentioning. It's just bad form. it doesn't work well for the person criticizing, is sort of my take on that. India Robot. So this is a Tezos event, bullish number, hashtag bullish23 as Friday comes to Asia Pacific. I'm just loving that it's Friday. You can start minting any time now. Don't forget to tag your post with bullish23 and use bullish23 on tweets. So I'm bringing this up because I saw a few bullish23 and I figured hashtags, and I thought, oh, I guess that's something where people were invited. No, you simply make a work that relates to bullish23, and maybe there's more info on it, but anybody can participate. So this is a Tezos event, community event, and minting date for the next week. So something fun for everybody. Let's give that a retweet. So that is India Robot. And here I clicked on the hashtag, and so you see people are putting bulls. Here's an update here. So just a quick look, and I took some of my favorites, some highlights of artists we look at here, some of the artists we look at here. And so you see, so anyway, so for those people, those artists that are looking, it's kind of an easy, nice way to get exposed to other people. This is interesting. Dom. So lots of interesting stuff here. So we're going to look at a few of these things. It's, if you have if you're starting out, like we talked, there's that person that commented yesterday that hadn't started a wallet. This is a good way to get your name out there, because then people will click on the hashtag like this and then get exposed to your work. So something you might consider. I'm not going to leave this on for too long because of the flashing light here. I just thought it was funny though. I actually liked this piece quite a bit. Sabato, just checking in on the ETH collectors and kind of satirizing them a bit. Please buy me or I will literally die. I just like the composition. It looks like he's using a couple of different softwares here. I could be wrong, but I thought that was a really nice piece by Sabato. Fences of Sanity. And so this is from Bullish23, I believe. Yes, here it is, the hashtag Bullish23, and you see the bull here. So this is by Uxine. This is up for auction. It's a 1 of 1. And I thought, I'll tell you what my favorite part of this was. I thought it was first of all, a nice solution here with the bull's head and, almost the Grim Reaper here. What might normally be the computer head. But my favorite part were these things here. These, what look like ASCII text and then repeated and then kind of gift out here. I thought this was quite brilliant. Actually, a very powerful, simple effect, and then just done almost like paint that's dripping just here and there, and then you got some light flashing there, a couple of homunculi. This was an interesting one, almost a person in the water. So very psychological work by Uxine here, keeping with the traditional colors, feeling a little more saturated than, say, a couple of months ago, but I could be wrong about that. This is another work by Uxine I just wanted to highlight here because this stuff actually, I might be tempted to start with works like this to a certain degree if people wouldn't think it's weird. But I'm quite intrigued by what's going on here because it seems to me that Uxine is using different renderings. There's something very Warholian about what's going on in this little GM because he has his original, let's say, image of a computer, and it seems, who knows, it seems to me that they're getting processed in different ways. Like he has different versions of this kind of bitmapization, for lack of a better term, rasterization, whatever you want to call it, and that he's layering different layers on top of each other like a Warhol, and I think it looks gorgeous and beautiful. I just think, to me, this is incredibly interesting. Because sort of like Warhol, it's verging in on kind of cracking a code where all of a sudden you can just take any image and, screenshot this, and take any image and process it in an interesting way like Warhol did. So that's why I look at this process and I go, this is really exciting and promising and inspiring. It makes me want to experiment more with that sort of stuff. Very, very, very interesting work from Uxine there, just as a little GM. So here's Rosatio, another bull, Bullish 23, digital collage, brazen. Really nice piece here, isn't it? Very kind of resolved is what I'd be tempted to call this. Interesting animation on the eyes, and just great kind of contrast here with this, what looks like a kind of oil stick, a digital oil stick on top of what looks like, collage. And so just interesting work here. There's the moon. So a lot, it's interesting also from a process point of view with Rosaceo is you have your tools, you have your elements, right? You have your elements, and then you can just kind of rearrange, retool, and it's like, okay, I need to make a bull. So I have this banana here, one of my images that I like to use, one of the elements I like to use. Maybe I can use that for the legs. So there's kind of a endless retooling. There seems to be a reusing, of the eye and the skeleton, but in a really interesting, fresh way each time. So just interesting work from Rosaceo. Edition of 22. Have they sold yet? They were just minted. And this is another work, Sarisa Kojima, whose work we looked at before, Ushi. So this is also for Bullish 23. A stunning tribute to the majestic power of the bull, one of the many creatures revered in Japanese folklore. So let's see. So you can kind of see the bull here. This is the horn, I believe, and here is the head and another kind of nose ring, for lack of a better term. There's probably a more technical term for that. And here's a person beside the bull and some beautiful flowers. So just a nice illustration here. Looks like we have some digital paper underneath there too. Edition of 10. And they have started to go for 10 Tezos, an offer of 20. So pretty cool work. Here is Edmerola's, and this is also for Bullish 23. I haven't seen this minted anywhere, but I assume it'll be on Tezos. Look at this texture here. Again, it has this like oil painting kind of feel. And you know what the feel is down here and over here? It's actually, how wild is this? This actually has the sense of a photograph of an oil painting, where you start to see the reflection on the oil painting. That's what it evokes when I look at it, but it was probably made completely different. So very interesting. And I love the treatment of the bull here with a vase on top. It kind of has an Eastern feel to it here. And really just kind of ancient and mysterious as ever with Edmerola. Here's another one, mech.txt. This bull is an instrument of torture. I heard a faint scream. So almost looking like a sacrifice of sorts. I'm not sure, but the bull is still alive. So I'm actually not sure. Breathing out this moving, dithering, this dithered. So this is interesting because, mech.txt is using more animation, we might notice here recently, which is quite interesting. And here's the fire. I heard a faint scream, a little more text as well. I'm not sure what the references are, but it's interesting to see mech.txt kind of develop here. It seems to be going in a more animation with maybe even text at times here. Wasteman Goldminovich. So this is just not Bullish 23. This is an artist who is being initiated, instead of with a sword, with a very large hot dog here. And there's a hot dog on the head. And so here, one of my favorite series here on Tezos, The Failed Artist. And here the mustard is falling on the sad, kind of pathetic looking failed artist who is in the jester, the clown. And so this is available for 3 Tezos. There are 12 left, edition of 13. Have any sold? One has sold to Jay. So pretty cool as ever from Wasteman Goldminovich. Dan Control with a very slick looking work. This also continues to evolve in an interesting way. Dan has gotten so good by making all of these gradient works that now, Dan, he could probably, I was going to say before AI, he could probably get a job as a graphic designer with now being able to use gradients as well as he can. This is quite impressive. So a Nokia 6600, I assume, looking kind of frontally. Interesting solution too. I think there's older Nokias that Dan has that maybe there's a landscape. This to me is kind of almost perhaps a more evolved solution where you just have a light gradient rather than the horizon line. And then this nice shadow here. So it's getting interesting as ever. It's interesting as ever. Concept art from Dan Control. John, video editing. So taking a literal approach at video editing by splitting the TV in two. So more in the studio works here with the skeleton and trying to keep together these two different films here, these two different halves of a TV with an old school video camera in the background and the plants are moving. So just beautiful work here from John, whose collectors are not tired at all. You know, I think John has been listing a ton of work, and look, 33 Tezos times 25. I mean, that is like what, over 600 Tezos. So that is impressive. Probably close to 700 Tezos, which is $600. Not bad if you're putting out work almost daily. Like, let's take a very quick look here. Almost daily here. So not bad. I mean, let's say you put out 20 works. I mean, I guess there aren't 20 works. Let's look in May. There's 2, 4, 6, 7. Let's say you're making $600 a work for the sake of argument. 600 times 7 is 4,200 US dollars, let's say. Maybe let's just call it 3,500. Maybe it's more. That's a salary. So that's pretty cool. And in April, you know, maybe 5 or 6, 2, 4, 6, 5. So, okay, so but not going crazy here. March, there were maybe none. This frog humidifier might have been in March. So interesting. Manadil. So I thought this was a really gorgeous work by Manadil. So this is part of the signature series that you're seeing. And so here is Manadil's signature in the background, seemingly on a tablet or something. A whole bunch of kind of mysterious iconography here with the feather and everything. My absolute favorite part, though, is the rendering of the cat. With this, you see the same kind of dithering with Bombadil, what I call the four to the floor dithering, the kind of checkerboard dithering, which is super beautiful. Really nice dithering on the cat here. So just a beautiful work and maybe a signature work with the cats here. And there's another cat and everything. And there's a cat in the photo. So cats everywhere. NFT artist based out of Thailand, who pursued a degree in painting and innovation design from the university. She started her career as a graphic designer, motion designer, and video editor. So very cool work from Manadil. Let's just see. So these often go on sale for like a couple of days and then are burned. The rest are burned. So get it while you can for 2 Tezos. Beautiful, beautiful work. A homage from Santiago to mech.txt, whose work we're just looking at there. So, of course, Santiago has these Pollock-like abstracts. So now he's taking a pixel, an attempt at doing it in a pixelated fashion, somewhat, in a homage to mech.txt. You see more Santiago's colors, but mech.txt maybe in the composition a little bit. It almost looks like a kind of landscape here. So that is cool. We got distracted by cypresses in our way. Yeah, so here are, we could argue, cypresses. So playing with a little bit more representational work here. These are only 5 Tezos, but 15 have been canceled. So you might need to make an offer if you want to pick one up. And a really cool work by Datura that came out. Great color here. And just another, so Datura, again, does these semi-abstract works, but they're usually of landscapes. So let's see if that's in the title, Mirage. Rocks rolled and alive, clinging to the arid ground. So it's the fall of the night. Guess what's about to happen? So again, these are probably rocks. So playing like just barely representational or figurative, and just beautiful work here from Datura as ever. Just kind of a really solid artist. Haiti Roquette with some new experiments. I mean, this reminds me of Gerhard Richter. I mean, I had a friend who was making fun of Gerhard Richter. Let me see if I can find the Gerhard Richter horizontal digital paintings. Let's see if we can find it. Where it looks like, yeah. So almost kind of in the style of Gerhard Richter here. It's not a really big picture. Yeah, but you can see Gerhard Richter, you know, very famous artist, one of the most important German artists. He's still alive, by the way. Just changed his gallery. Interesting. So you see, I mean, I have a friend that was criticizing. It's like, Gerhard Richter, he basically had the criticism, anybody could do that sort of thing. So anyways, I thought that interesting. That always gets said about art before someone does it. I'll just say, so here's, this kind of evokes Haiti Roquette's new series here with some RGB colors here. Not exactly sure, because here it looks, I'm not exactly sure how these all fit together. But GRN00M13, because it looks like there's more colors in this work than are listed here, but I could be wrong about that. Maybe it is just a few colors. Here's another one, Generative Art, Amiga 1200. So so cool abstracts from Haiti Roquette. These are one of ones, and they're selling for 77 Tezos, and they are selling. So here are just a few others here. So always keeping it new, always experimenting here. We saw that with this Rad Magics series, now the Please Wait series. These one-of-ones. So an opportunity to get a Haiti Roquette one-of-one. Tegenhoff with a cool animated abstract. Kind of has a slightly pixel art feel to it. So cool work here. Just a nice, solid, animated abstract. Walking on Sunshine from Tegenhoff, only for a Tezos edition of 10. There are 4 left. This was interesting. Amanda Homum. I'm not sure if we've looked at Amanda's work before. Actually, we have. You might remember Amanda as the red telephone person. Let me show you. The person that made this. So this was a beautiful work. I think I might have showed this web growth here too. And these great stamps. Yeah, so here are some new interesting works. I thought this was quite interesting. Analog collage, later animated with frame by frame. So really mixing analog and digital here. This looks like a analog drawing here. You can even see little things. Yeah, just so. And this, I wonder if this is analog here as well. It sounds like it, but maybe that's made digitally. So anyways, interesting combination here. Uxine left a nice comment that the So Anyways issue is starting to be solved. I feel like I'm going back here. So still working on it. Okay, continuing on. There is another work here, Profundeza Virtual. So just another work by Amanda Homum. And again, combining analog and collage. So interesting to see, interesting experimentation, kind of a Windows 95 look and feel to it. Analog collage later animated with keyframe. So this is a one-of-one for 80 Tezos. Pamelo Cerrone with some really interesting works here. Los Muchachos. So again, if you've been around the Tezos object ecosystem, you'll be familiar with Pamelo Cerrone's, if I'm pronouncing that, Cerrone's work. Here's a one-of-one for 75 Tezos, and it is I guess it has that collage feel to it, doesn't it? And it's got like a person here, a bus, and whatever else is going on here. Los Muchachos, and here's another one which I quite liked as well, Why? And yeah, I think the Spanish I translated as travel drawings. So here is Japan. Kind of looks like Felix the cat, or the cat from Looney Tunes, Sylvester the cat from Looney Tunes. I quite like this. This is, I just find this like a really interesting mix of, feels like pop culture, but completely kind of destroyed and remixed at a certain point. A one-of-one for 40 Tezos, not a bad price. Dylan is back. Crown Shyness. So playing with the stamp UI and some interesting work here. So the hands and eyes in the hands, which we're seeing from another artist recently. And then the plants, interesting coloring and everything. Just a good looking work here. And nice kind of virtual paper for texture as well here. I assume this is Procreate. It's not clear though here. And here's another illustration from Dylan Cull. So again, kind of minimal, and again, feels like a digital illustration here, playing with outlines and colors underneath that don't necessarily match, which again, I think I said last episode, just turns into instant poetry. I mean, if you're looking for a reasonably priced one of one, this one is $4.52. One of one. Pretty nice one of one for 5 Tezos. Flora Marquez, speaking of reasonably priced one of ones, this one is gone. Feels so heavy sometimes. This is from May 28th. So very interesting combination here of what seems to be photography, a collage and illustration, and really, upsetting our expectations of kind of, this is very three-dimensional and this is very two-dimensional. So interesting contrast and experimentation here. And look at in here too, in this shadow, this seems to be like some charcoal or some, brush or whatever is being used here is being used there to fuse the images. So very interesting experimentation here. Here's another one, playing with what looks like a photo of a book. My car is my independence and freedom. Yeah, that is almost the story of the last half of the 20th century. The car represents freedom. And here it is for Flora Marquez too. So very cool work here as well. And eyes for headlights, which is kind of fun. I like the hubcaps here too. One of one for 15 Tezos. So more great one of ones. This one is sold out. I must take care of the things I worry about. I quite like this, using the drawing table. It is a very, beautiful object, the drawing table, or the cutting table is maybe what this is. Someone having a coffee. I must take care of the things I worry about. With some snakes here too. I could imagine Flora making this composition and just thinking to herself, or a snake, and just thinking, this needs something down here. Let's add a snake. And almost letting the shape decide what you're going to put, and then turn it, go, okay, we'll have a snake. We need something over here. Just speculating here. And one more, really interesting, almost like 90s style pants here. And my winter fashion is comfort. So maybe a self-portrait of sorts of Flora Marquez here. And some more, maybe almost looking like photography here in the shirt. Available for 15 Tezos. Daniel W., The Seal of Solomon, to safely study and understand the beings within here. So this is the start of a new series, The Ars of Goetia. And I don't even know what that means, but this is a sigil. And we should define what a sigil is here. I believe a sigil is like a magical marking that's supposed to have some kind of power. This looks a little bit like, it starts to look like the zodiac here, but no. So I think this is a sigil. Let's just put in here, this is by Daniel W., a one of one. What is a sigil? Because not everybody, a sigil is a type of symbol used in magic. The term has usually referred to a pictorial signature of a deity or spirit. In modern usage, especially in the context of chaos magic, sigil refers to a symbolic representation of the practitioner's desired outcome. So here you even see kind of some similar looking, works here. So there you go. That is a sigil. So there are a couple of works that have been released here. I think I brought one up here. The Ars Goetia. And it seems to be biblical, maybe having to do with Solomon. Baal is the first spirit ranked in the lesser key of Solomon. So quite, again, esoteric here with Daniel W. So pretty cool. Baal. So referencing, again, the Bible, it seems here, or at least some sort of the Book of Solomon or something interesting here too. So all sorts of goodness here from Daniel W. Let's just see, 3 Tezos and selling well. How many? 5 left. So get it while you can. And also, as we're wrapping up here, some AI Venta. So AI and digital painting. Interesting work, isn't it? Look at that grass. Look at that wild grass over here, which feels like an oil painting. And again, there's something really just exciting and energetic about Venta's work, and I'm not sure why, but it's quite beautiful. There's something, it feels very modern in a certain sort of way. Maybe it's that kind of 3D kind of feel, but it all still feels painterly. You know, you have all this 3D in the figure, but then you have like the brush strokes over top, which feel kind of flat, but then the object that the brush strokes are made of is quite 3D. So maybe it's that contrast between kind of flat painterliness, like we see in the grass here, and this 3D-ness. We have others I have others that I want to show here by Venta here. There's this really interesting series. And this reminds me, I need to bring those pictures from Munich of the Alta Pinakothek, maybe on Monday, right panel of 2 figures. So this is a homage to Francis Bacon here. Not the first time we've seen that in this scene. We've seen it a few times. We just saw it with Rosetto. We've seen it with Ratcloak and others. So Francis Bacon continues to inspire people. This is, he was never trained, by the way. I don't think he ever was trained in painting. Like, he just kind of learned on his own, which is quite interesting because he's an incredible painter. So here are some AI tributes by Venta, and maybe some digital painting in there too. Quite beautiful. One of one. Let's just see what the market thinks. 25 Tezos and sold. And there were quite a few. Here's another one. Portrait. So these are portrait of George Dyer and Lucian Freud after Bacon. So it's almost like Venta is taking whatever prompts maybe that Venta is using to get all this stuff, and then maybe combining those prompts, blending those prompts with Francis Bacon painting, where you put the emphasis on the prompts over the painting, perhaps. So interesting, one of one. Let's just see what this went for. Accept offer of 100 Tezos. So these are popular. I think they look great. And here's Mikey Wilson with the AI work, Snake Rider Blues. So continuing with the blues theme here, and in the desert now. Interesting kind of surreal road, which is also a snake feeling. And a quote by the Doors. And again, from the end, the snake is long, 7 miles, ride the snake, he's old, and his skin is cold. I believe that's the end by the Doors. Mirrors in the Room by Sum. Just kind of an interesting painting here. Again, AI artwork. I thought the composition, this interior, is super interesting with the mirrors here. There's something quite kind of just very interesting about it, and you can kind of see the wall, the other side of the wall here through the paintings, which feel like they're at slightly different angles here, giving you a different kind of view on the room. Very interesting. And so this is, but we don't see ourselves here though, interestingly. So conceptually, really nice. Part of this Serene Sanctuary series, edition of 10, 6 left. Nice work. Mr. Shapeless, Dusty Peak. So again, Mr. Shapeless often puts it, the experimental works onto objects. So here's one. It's quite beautiful. And you see this really stylized clouds and just a really interesting, it almost looks like a Greek city, Greek landscape here. So all to say, a just nice, interesting color too, interesting light. So this is available for 10 Tezos by Mr. Shapeless. It's part of a series called Isle of Man. And they're not all landscapes, interestingly. I can open that quickly here. You'll see we got figures and everything. So, a cowboy here. So it seems like interesting concept series here by Mr. Shapeless on Isle of Man. A new series, and that is your show today, everybody. Thank you for joining me again. I hope you have a great weekend. Until next time, take care.